Minority influence. You need to be aware of 3 factors that can influence minority influence: consistency, commitment, and flexibility. So minority influence is a form of social influence where members of a majority group change their beliefs due to exposure to a minority. Minority influence is most likely to lead to internalization, so both public and private change of beliefs. Now, the 3 factors you need to be aware of are consistency, commitment, and flexibility. So consistency, a minority is more likely to be persuasive if they are consistent in the message they are portraying, in the approach they are taking. So it can happen in 2 ways. They can be consistent amongst themselves, so everyone within the minority are saying the same thing, or they can be consistent over time, so they're saying the same thing over a period of time. So synchronic consistency or diachronic consistency can impact on how persuasive a minority is. Commitment. So if they are willing to be committed and engage in extreme activities to draw attention to the issue, they are more likely to be paid attention to, they're more likely to be persuasive. So it's important that these extreme activities are at some risk to themselves as they demonstrate commitment to the issue. Now, majority group members may pay more attention. Wow, he must really believe in what he's doing. I must pay attention if they are willing to take a risk, and that is called the all attention principle. More about that in the social change video. Flexibility. So flexibility is more effective by changing majority opinion than rigid arguments. So they shouldn't be too dogmatic in their viewpoint. They shouldn't be extremely consistent. They need to show that they are willing to listen and adapt and be flexible of some of the viewpoints. So they need to be prepared to listen to reasonable and valid counter arguments, and maybe showing that some compromise is needed in order to be effective. So Moscovici's research, so the aim was to investigate the influence of a minority. Now the procedure, 32 groups of 6 female participants were told they were taking part in a study of perception. There were 36 blue-green slides, and they differed in terms of their shade. Now they were either all identified as green, so consistent in the minority, or they were inconsistently called green or blue by the minority of the Confederates. Now it was found that the consistent minority led to a conformity rate of 8.42, whereas an inconsistent minority led to a conformity rate of 1.25%. So the conclusions are that a consistent minority can influence a majority, whereas an inconsistent one had little effect. So the minority needs to be consistent in the message that they are portraying. Now, you might get this as an example of a question that's testing your AO1. Name 3 behaviours that enable a minority to be influenced by a majority. So flexibility, commitment, and consistency. Similarly, you could be asked about research into minority influence. That would be Moscovici's research. Or you might be asked to provide a bit more detail about one of the factors that influence a majority. So explain how consistency of a minority will influence a majority for 4 marks. So in terms of evaluation, so we have supporting evidence for consistency and flexibility. So Wood et al. Carried out a meta-analysis of almost 100 studies and found that consistent minorities were the most influential in influencing majorities, so it suggests that consistency is a major factor. We also have a simulated jury study and investigating flexibility, and when a Confederate was seen as too rigid and in their argument they had little effect on other members of the group, but when they were perceived as showing some flexibility they were more influential towards the majority. So that supports the idea that flexibility is an important factor. A limitation is that real-life social influence situations are more complicated than simply minority influence, majority influence. There is more involved than just the size of the numbers of the groups. So majorities usually have a lot more power and status than minorities, so that could be why they're more influential. Also, minorities are very committed to their cause, so these types of research don't really explain real life situations. They also use artificial tasks. So in terms of identifying the colour of a slide, it's completely removed from real life minority influence, and therefore it lacks external validity and ecological validity because the tasks lack mundane realism and they're so artificial. Do they really explain how minorities influence in real world? Can the findings be applied outside of the research setting? Probably not, therefore it does lack ecological validity. We might get a question that's outline and evaluate research into minority influence. In terms of this, research can mean theories, studies and explanations. So I would do my AO1 paragraph on the 3 factors: commitment, consistency and flexibility. Then I'd do my AO1 on Moscovici's research, and then I would evaluate the studies.